that the thigh looks good to go. Alrighty. It's important to just rotate everything around before you put it in the game, because then you can notice any big issues before doing all the effort of converting it back to an RE Engine mesh. So, shin. Alrighty. Okay, everything looks like it's doing good. So real quick, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn back on the x-axis mirror. I'm going to rotate these up, and I'm also just gonna... Oh, no, not that. I'm going to grab them, so that way I can better see these, because I don't want this part to be moving. I just want it to be rigged to the chest. So after I'm done doing that, I go into object mode, select the suit mesh. I'm also going to hide the armature just so it's easier to do. I'm going to go back into modifiers, and I'm going to click this and this. And what these will do is it'll just basically make the pose show up in edit mode, because if I didn't have those click, what it would look like in edit mode would just be in the normal resting pose, and that's no good. So just click that, and boom. And what I like to do here is, this is the process of basically just cleaning up your weights. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to select... Oh. I'm going to change this to face select, and I'm going to do this. And by doing that, I'm able to select faces through the vertices. It basically makes the vertices transparent, whereas here, if I were to just do this, it would only select the vertices on the one side, and that's not what I want. I want to be able to select everything that is in there just to be sure that everything looks a-okay. And so since this is the left side, I'm going to go into vertex groups. I'm also going to toggle back over here, just so that way it's easier for me to see. I am going to look for anything related to the left shoulder, armpit, or upper arm. So this one, upper arm twist, and I'm going to click this button, remove. Remove, and it's basically you just keep doing this until you get it to deform the way that you want to. So I'm just going to time-lapse my way through that. Just going to interject here to bring in something new for you guys. If you press this up here in weight paint, it lets you only paint the weights that are selected in edit mode, and so this is pretty useful for cleaning up vertices and rigging. So I'm just going to actually go to clean, go to smooth, go to normalize, and that'll make sure that you get a clean looking deform when you edit it. So this actually looks a bit better, but there's still a bit of changing that can be done, but you know what? I'm gonna call this good enough because it won't be super noticeable unless if you're one of those people who likes to take pictures of your game. But even then, it still won't be that bad. So I'm going to go ahead and just do a bit more cleaning up on this side, and then I'll go over to the other side. So I'd say I'm actually pretty happy with how this looks. I'm just going to do some other tweaks just to be sure that it looks the way that I want to. Okay, so once you're happy with how your cleaning looks, next what we're going to go over is, real quick, I'm just going to remove the pose by pressing A to select all the bones, go to pose, clear transform, select all. I'm going to show you guys how to edit textures. So, if you'll just follow me over to Photoshop, I'll show you guys what you need to do. Alrighty, so we're in Photoshop, and for editing textures, you can use Photoshop or GIMP, pretty much anything that you're comfortable with, as long as it can open .tga images. TGA or DDS is what we use for converting and editing DMC5 textures. So a few texture lingo that you need to know in order to, succeed and understand what I'm talking about, would be the diffuse texture. So it'd be the thing that makes Dante's coat red, the things that makes his skin look peachy, all that sort of stuff. The normal texture, or sometimes the bump map, is basically something that adds extra detail to the model that would be a little too taxing on the hardware to model on. So it's basically to just bring actual texture to the model. The roughness map can do many different things, but in the case of RE Engine, it controls the glossiness of a model. So if you have a roughness map and it is set to be maximum roughness, which would be, in the case of RE Engine, black, it would look really glossy, kind of like a plastic toy or something like that. The metallic map would be the map that controls, what makes something look dark and reflective. And that combined with the roughness map creates a sort of metallic look. And so for the case of RE Engine, that would be that would make the metallic map would be white to be actually like metallic looking. Another thing you need to know is ambient occlusion or just occlusion. And what it is it's a monochromatic map that controls the lighting of a texture or a model to make it look, to have it extra shading that would otherwise be a little too much to be like having the engine actually do itself. So it's basically shading that is baked into the model. And another one would be subsurface scattering. That is additional sort of lighting details, and that's usually reserved for skin, so it's not something that you need to worry about too much. And in the case of RE Engine, for DMC5 at least, these are stored on 3 different maps. You got the ALBM map, the album, that's what I call it. ALB stands for albedo, which is another word for diffuse, so once again, that's the color. The M stands for metallic, and so that means that the metallic map is on the alpha channel of the ALBM texture, and I'll show you guys how to deal with alpha channels and stuff like that. Next would be the NRMR map. I just call it the normal map just because it's quick, but NRM stands for normal, and then R stands for roughness, and roughness, like the ALBM, is stored in the alpha. And then the next one would be ADOS. So ADOS can control a lot of things. A stands for alpha, I believe. T stands for transparency or translucency, so that can control if a model looks transparent, or it can also control stuff like, glow. O is occlusion, so it's ambient occlusion like we talked about, extra shading. And S is on the alpha map of the ADOS texture, and that is the subsurface scattering. So, for starters, what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this TGA file as a PNG, so that way I can pull it up in Blender. And what I want to do is I actually want to change the colors of this suit so that way it's not solid black. So I want to do a nice red and black sort of theme, because this is going to be Dante's suit. So if you just go into Blender, you select the object that that texture applies to. In this case, it would be the top of the suit. You go into Texture Paint, and it says Mode Material and No Textures, so we can fix that. Just press the little plus right here, choose Base Color, press OK, double click it, and as you can see, it's total white, pure white. Not what we want. So if you just go to Image, Replace, and then you go to where your texture is stored, in my case it would be here, and it would be Cloth PNG. As you can see, this is like hella fucking black. So what I'm going to do real quick is I am actually going to increase the brightness and the contrast, so that way I can sort of get a better idea of where everything on this suit is. So, just gonna do that, just so that way it looks a little more clear to look at in Blender. And once again, I'm just gonna save that as a PNG, save it, overwrite it, and do that. And I'm going to reload the image in Blender. And so it's a lot brighter, and so it's easier to tell, like, what is what. Okay, so this makes sense. So these lapels are supposed to be a sort of darker color compared to the rest of the suit. Okay, and in the case of texture editing, it's often very helpful to have the UV map pulled up. And what the UV map is it's basically the model unwrapping itself into 2D, so that way it's easier to understand what everything is for the... So what the UV map is it's basically the model unwrapping itself into a 2D version of itself. So that way it can apply the textures onto it, because textures aren't 3D, textures are 2D. And it's really hard to apply 2D objects into a 3D space, which is what the UV map helps with. So in this case, I can see that this section up here is the jacket, and these are parts to the tie, it looks like. And I can see that there's actually some clipping on the lapel and the tie, and that's actually pretty easy to fix. You just do G, Y, you know, you can fix that pretty easily. You can also go into sculpt mode and fix it. But for the time being, I'm just gonna leave it be. So this section controls the suit. This section controls the sleeves, I believe. Yes, it does. Okay, so that's good to know. So now that we're back in Photoshop, what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose this tool, and I'm going to right-click it and go to Polygonal Lasso tool. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select all of the different meshes here. Not meshes per se, but like, you know, the different textures for the suit. I'm going to try my best to avoid any other textures that I see that belong to other parts of the suit. So right here, for example, that would be the parts of the necktie. And I'm also going to go and select the sleeves. And to do that, instead of having your selection set to this setting by default, set it here. And what that'll do is that'll add to your selection that you already have. So I'm just gonna try my best to just avoid any other parts of the suit. It doesn't have to be perfect, because you know, no texture island or anything like that is completely perfect. And I'm just gonna keep going around like this. And it's okay if these two overlap, because they're going to be the same color anyways. And then I'm going to press Ctrl-C, Ctrl-V to copy that. And that's just for convenience sake, honestly, so that way you can just quickly select everything. And then if you go down here, you can choose different sorts of color editing maps. So I'm going to choose Hue, Saturation, and then I'm going to select again, and choose Brightness Contrast. And I'm going to hide this Brightness Contrast map that I have set, and I'm going to set the Hue Saturation map to Colorize. And then I'm just going to up the saturation to a decent level. And it's important to remember that games like DMC5 have a pretty desaturated color style, so it's a good idea to try and match the sort of color style that the game is going for, so that way your model doesn't look too out of place, unless if you're doing something like an anime model replacement, in which case it doesn't need to be too perfect. So that looks like a good shade of red, so I'm actually going to brighten it just a little bit more, just to be sure that it shows up nice and good in the game. And then I'm going to, once again, save it as a PNG, and I'm going to refresh the texture in Blender and see how that looks. It's very important to just kind of go back and forth between Photoshop and Blender, just to be sure that everything looks the exact same way that you want it to look. So if I just hit reload, okay, yeah, that's a nice shade of red. But as I'm looking at this, I'm thinking this might look better for the EX colors. I'm not sure if I want to do the vest right here as red, or the coat right here as red. But that's okay if you're not sure what to do like I am. What you can do is you can just keep messing around with everything until you find a look that you like for it. So I'm going to do that once again. Just go back in. I'm going to hide that. And also